From the convent of the Good Shepherd overlooking Inwood Hill Park in New York City, welcome to Inwood Art Works On Air. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we welcome filmmaker Louis Carrasco. Louis is a filmmaker and photographer from the Bronx, New York. He worked in the media industry for close to 10 years, having graduated from CUNY Lehman College with a BA in Media Studies. He recently moved back from Los Angeles, working on many settings. His last directed short was a 2-episode series called Famished Artists. He's also a recipient of the Inwood Festival Filmmaker Fund Award for his project, The Puerto Rican Jew. We're going to talk to him about his work behind the camera and so much more, but first, let me welcome you, Louis, to Inwood Art Works On Air. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, man.
You bet. So, I'm just going to start at the beginning. How did you find your way behind a camera?
It kind of started when I went back to college. I was at BMCC for 2 years, and I was like just working full time and going to school, so it was like just hard. And then when I decided to go back to college, that's what I knew I wanted to focus in. And I started interning there. I started working there, and then I just started working there. Like, again, start to work with the cameras, started doing photography, videos, and then started working on people's short films.
Well, I love the way you frame scenes. You have a really great eye. What's going through your head when you're framing? What are you looking for?
Well, the biggest thing for me is like I always want to get like the best performance from the actors. So that's what I usually work closest with. Mm-hmm. But frameworks, I always try to keep it, I guess, like realistic and like try to make the lighting kind of like dramatic and try to have like a message in the story without saying anything.
Yeah, I noticed you use a lot of natural light to tell the story too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was watching Famished Artists the other day. The first episode, we're on the sidewalk and you're getting that sunset a little bit on the guy's face, and it's that half and half of like making. And he has to make it's kind of a little bit of foreshadowing him having to make a choice of leaving the outer world and going into an underworld, so to speak, right?
Exactly. We actually shot that episode twice because our lead actor dropped out on us.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so we had to shoot that whole scene all over again. Kind of like all his scenes, and that was like pretty hectic.
I bet. Wow. Well, so what was the and I want to say you're one of the co-creator of Famished Artists too, right? Mm-hmm. So how did that come about, the concept?
So I came up with the idea, and then I went to some people. The first one was Carlos, who I told him I had this idea, and I usually bounce ideas off of him because I don't trust my writing. I never felt comfortable in that. Like I always felt like I have the story, but for like to put the dialogue out there.
But that's good though. You need a sounding board.
Yeah.
I have my wife. That's what I use. So I'm always like, is this crazy? Like I'll write something going, she's like, and she always makes it. My point is like other people enhance. I feel like they enhance your work. I know there's a little bit of fear factor sometimes and a little bit of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
When you're giving something over of yourself. But I find most of the time, they make your work better.
Yeah, I learned that a long time ago. Like, you gotta like embrace, like, ask for that help. Be open to the criticism. You know, because at the end of the day, they're also trying to like have the best out for you too. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Carlos, you're working with him. It's Carlos Hiciano, by the way, full name. One of our favorite film festival alums from 2 years ago, I think, right now.
Yeah.
And for his movie Kiko. So let's chat a bit about your award-winning film project, The Puerto Rican Jew. Before we talk about the show, I want to mention one name to you, and if it resonates or not.
Okay.
Juan Epstein.
No.
Well, 1975, Juan Epstein was the Puerto Rican Jew on the TV show set in Brooklyn, Welcome Back, Kotter.
I did not know that. Wow.
That's the only reason why I have a reference. So if I hear Puerto Rican Jew, and I'm of Generation X, okay, folks? So I'm no hiding my age here. But like that was, because he was famous, part of his shtick was he was a Puerto Rican Jew.
Okay.
Which is, and that was played into the bizarreness of his character. And that's what the show, for again, a little movie trivia history and TV history, gave John Travolta his start. but as a young man. And Ron Palillo also had to start there. I forget the name of the actor who played Freddie Boom Boom Washington. Also, he's everywhere. But also, it was a vehicle for Gabe Kaplan, who was a big stand-up comedian at the time. But anyway, enough of the trip down TV history lane.
But I was going to say, I thought you were going to mention Geraldo Rivera, because the other day I was randomly on Twitter and I saw his profile, and then on his bio, it just said Jew Rican. I was like, I had no idea.
That makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
But we all know who Geraldo is, right?
Yeah.
Well, first off, was Geraldo available for the film shoot? Is he?
Unfortunately not.
Okay, I guess his representation didn't get back to you maybe. Okay, so tell me, where does your Puerto Rican Jew come from?
So during quarantine, like when everybody was locked down, I decided to take one of those DNA tests because I was like, oh, I have the time. I'm like home pretty much all day now. So I took it, and then when I got the results back, it said 50% Jewish, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. I thought it was gonna be like mostly Spanish, and like, oh, maybe I'm from like Spain or something.
Mm-hmm.
But when it said 50% Jewish, I was like, okay. And then I talked to my sister, who also took the test, and her results didn't come out that way. So I was like, oh, this is raising a lot of questions now.
Wow.
So I was like, at first it was a lot of like, I was shocked. I was like, oh my God. Like, and I don't have anybody to ask these questions because unfortunately both my parents have passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But yeah, like I was never like, nobody ever mentioned it to me. Like my mom didn't, so I was like, did my dad know and he just didn't care, or maybe he didn't know? Because I wasn't treated like any different. I was just treated, like the family.
But two totally different cultures.
Yeah.
My wife is half Puerto Rican, not Jewish, Irish, the other side. And so, I mean, I've been to Puerto Rico, and it's a totally different story than going to, say, Israel. Or anywhere else that celebrates the Jewish customs. So yeah, two totally different warring factions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because my whole life has just been like Puerto Rican culture. Like, you know, my grandma took me to Puerto Rico when I was 14. So now that I'm knowing about Jewish, I'm like, I want to like try to like learn about this, but I'm like, I don't know like where to start. Like I've never like been really embraced in that culture before.
So this is this film, but it's a narrative film. It's not a documentary, right?
It's a narrative.
Yeah.
Correct.
So this is so very, but somewhat autobiographical for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it like loosely based, and also I didn't want to like make it too much about me or like over dramatic. So I wanted to keep it like lighthearted.
Gotcha.
Because at the end of the day, when I found out the results, I was like, I'm still who I am.
Right.
It's not going to really change who I am, but it's just a new thing about me.
Sure. So the hero of the journey, we'll say, is not necessarily you, but parts of you, we'll say.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. And where are you now in the production process?
So right now we posted our casting. We've gotten a lot of like auditions. Not audition applications. So we're about to start choosing people of who we would like to see audition.
Yeah.
So we're at that process, and we've almost got some locations down, and we're gonna set to shoot. And we definitely know we want to shoot in June.
Okay. Great. It's a good time to shoot. Absolutely. People are available then for the most part in the summers.
Yeah.
Pilot season's over, and yeah, a lot of that stuff is good. Like you said, you're working with Carlos. You're a bit of a dream team. You worked on Kiko together and other projects. So let's go back for a second about that creative process. Like when you're bouncing ideas off each other, like do you bring an idea to him? Does he bring it to you? Who's writing the scripts? How do you guys share responsibilities?
So when Carlos he always like writes his own film, but then he'll like send me an email with the script, and he'll just ask me like, hey, what do you think about this and my thoughts, and I'll just give him like my feedback on that. But pretty much every film, because we've known each other like over 10 years now, I've helped him out on every film. When he lived in Chicago, he actually asked me to fly out, and I flew out to Chicago to help him with the film. I worked as I was the behind the scenes photographer and videographer, like kind of like documenting the whole process.
Gotcha.
And then his latest film, Kiko, I was more of like a production assistant and just like all around, like whatever you need, just, it was a very small crew, so whatever you needed, I'll help you with.
What is the significance of a production photographer? It doesn't get talked about very much.
I love it. It's some of my favorite photography because you're catching people in the moment, in the scenes, and then also like when they're not acting, you're just catching great moments. So, and it's just a very collaborative environment. Like everybody's just, is having fun. It's a really good time.
Gotcha. Do you like to do more of that work, you think, coming up? Or like what?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think production photography is some of my favorite photography I've ever done.
Very cool. Very cool. So what else are you working on to keep yourself busy in the mix right now? You have this production, and what else do you do during the day or during the weekends when you're not working on the Puerto Rican Jew?
Well, I do work a full-time job Monday through Friday. I work as like an audiovisual technician, so I'm like running their events. But now that they know that I do like video photography, they actually want to like buy me equipment so I can start shooting because they've been outsourcing.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, instead of us paying all this money, we'll get you equipment so you can start. So they're kind of changing my job title.
Thank you for bringing it up, because like I just want to tell everyone that, particularly like if you're trying to get your feet wet in the business, like nothing like having free resources, right? And then or showing your value to your company, particularly in the audio visual world, because equipment can be so expensive, not only to purchase but just to borrow. Sometimes the insurance you got to put down to borrow and rent equipment can be as much as the equipment itself. And a lot of individual solo artists don't have insurance. So you end up putting deposits down and it makes things even more expensive. So I thank you for bringing that up. It's fully endorsed. Hopefully people do that because it's necessary. Because it's hard enough. Like prices are so high right now anyway, just to rent a truck or to just for carting things around, a U-Haul, whatever, gas, whatever. It's we won't mention the price of eggs, I guess, but unless you're doing that for a props free show. But it's difficult. So yeah, make your films as cheaply as you can, and you say, and you have all that audio, video editing, and work too. And now, are you the editor of your show? Who does the editing?
For the Puerto Rican Jew? I think for this one, it's going to be Alfonso, who is Carlos's cousin.
Alfonso Rodriguez, we know him well, yes.
Yeah, so the three of us have worked like very closely like over the years.
Another Inwood guy.
Yeah.
But now he's moved out of Connecticut. We still talk to him, though. He's still part of the family. Well, very cool. For now, exactly. And do you guys have any other screenplays on the horizon? Your little mafia you're put together? Any other projects you're kind of boiling up?
Well, I think Alfonso has some project coming up where I think he just wants to do like stock footage.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to be helping him with that in the next few weeks. But I also work with this other production company called New Face Media. And they do like shoots all around the city. And then every now and then when they need a videographer or something, they will like hit me up and like, hey, we need somebody, and I'll come in. But it's usually just like your standard stuff, like maybe a Congress hearing,
Right. Well, very cool. Well, Louis, I applaud you and all your work you're doing, and I can't wait to hear about, we're kind of keeping the story under wraps here with the Puerto Rican Jew, but everyone gets it. It's a little bit about an awakening and taking that journey, and we're looking forward to hopefully having it in the tank for the next Inwood Film Festival in 2024.
I cannot wait. I'm
That'd
excited.
be awesome. Well, once again, thank you again, Louis, for joining me on this Artist Spotlight episode of Inwood Art Works On Air. Really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. So this is Inwood Art Works On Air. It's where I meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home here in Upper Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show us some love right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. That really does help. Many thanks to the Church of Good Shepherd here in Inwood, New York City, and to HideSites.com for Uptown promotional support. You can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation to inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. It really does help. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep up with all we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmmakers Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, and so much more. Inwood Artworks is proud to be supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with City Council. And Inwood Artworks programming is made possible by the State of New York Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks On Air.